right, we'll call this meeting to order and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, everyone has had a chance to look at the minutes of the July 8th meeting. Does anybody have any corrections that should be made? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the July 7th?
July 8th.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting July 8th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
We also have, there was this special meeting that was the interviews.
Oh,
so we
yeah.
should do, and that was
Yes.
simply.
I will entertain another motion then.
I'll make a
Go.
motion to approve the 7/24 of 24 unofficial meeting minutes of the special meeting.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the special meeting. Minutes all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. Now we'll move on to our monthly transactions. Approval of general fund vouchers 81,548 through 81,605. And wire transfers 20240597 through 20240648.
Make a motion to, did you open that?
Yep.
I make a motion to approve the general fund vouchers and wire transfers as read.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded to approve the general fund vouchers and wire transfers. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. The next item of business is the public comment. Bo, thank you for coming in.
He's spotlight
public
on
comments?
education.
He is speechless, ladies and gentlemen. All right, then we'll move on to the next item of business, which is item 5, review of the district's cyber security efforts. And that's you, Bo.
Yeah, spotlight in education. So yeah, thank you, Bo, for coming in tonight.
Of course.
I invited him in just to kind of talk about going back to early last spring, probably late spring and into the summer. There's been a number of things that Bo has done, and we've talked about to enhance cybersecurity. It's been a big hot topic in the world of K-12 education that has been targeted more recently in the last year or so. I think that hackers view, public schools, or identified that many public schools kind of had weaker security systems. Although I say that yet because then you hear on the news about, financial or medical institutions that get hacked, and so. But anyway, it's been a big concerted effort in our field. So I wanted Bo to just kind of share some of all the work he's been doing.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that was done this past year would be the cybersecurity audit that we just had done early June. We hired a company called CIT, or Computer Integration Technologies, out of Woodbury, to do an audit on the three main systems we have, one being our firewall, the Ultimate Edge Device, Active Directory, which houses all of our users and computers used within the building, and our G Suite account, which is everything Google, which we all know is a big part now. What they did is, for a couple of days, they have a tech remote in, and then they kind of snoop around, and they have some software that they run that just kind of pokes and prods everything that we have. And they send a report back letting us know what we're doing well, what we could improve on, and what should really be fixed right away. So they sent it back, and we've really been hammering that stuff out so far. There wasn't anything that was overly concerning, luckily. A lot of cleanup work that needed to be done in the Active Directory side. The firewall stuff, there was a couple of rules that just need to be reconfigured, so we got that done. And G Suite stuff just has a few little tweaks here and there that we should be making that'll really help. The next one is our backups. We just renewed our backup subscription. I believe that was last year. So what we have is a backup solution by a company called Unitrends, who is like not a partner, but it's similar to a data backup, where it backs up all of our in-house stuff, and it backs up on a nightly basis. And we like to go by the industry standard, the 3-2-1 rule. You have 3 different copies of your backup on 2 different types of quote-unquote media, and then one's off-site. So we actually have a copy on the device itself. We have a copy on a USB hard drive that's plugged into it called a cold copy that sits back there. And then we have a third one that sits at the elementary school that we swap. So it'll cold copy to this one for 2 weeks, and we swap them, and it just allows us for a very low cost to have the 3-2-1 rule, which is what the industry likes to go by. For as far as the firewall part, we were able to enable some geo-blocking, they call it. Basically what that does is we're able to just start axing any traffic that comes from something with a different country code. So right now we only have traffic that's enabled to come into our school from the United States and Canada. So we were able to just block off everything from Europe, everything from South America. So that was a very simple solution that we can do, but it really helps tone down anything that could be coming in.
Because a lot of the hacking efforts come from overseas. I mean, that's the reality of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And with that, the biggest thing that we've had discussions about, like up at CISA in regards to security, is hardening your G Suite accounts, because most of your attacks are going to come from a phishing attempt. Someone sends you an email, click a link, boom, you're down. So what we did over this summer now is we also hired CIT to help us implement a DMARC policy. What that does is Google, we put a certificate within Google that anything that sends with an @clwarriors.org account, it has to get checked first. And we publish these the allowed addresses and the allowed basically users within our DNS, our public DNS domain. So Google checks that. If it doesn't match, we've been able to now implement it where it just denies anyone else sending. So we have it tightened down to now where everyone that receives an email from an @CLWarriors is now coming from us or one of our systems here. We have like our phone system sends out voicemails. It's not an actual address, but we have it locked down to now our school and the G Suite cloud. So that was a big thing to lead into like the next one, which is KnowBe4. We hired not even a company, I guess. It's a software package that we actually phish our own users. So they give us access to an online platform, and then we send out our own fake phishing emails. We'll send one to Brian. If he clicks on it, it sends us a report telling him Brian's our weak link. So it's been a fun way of trying to get people to realize, this is what you look at, and then that's why you should be clicking on it. So it's brought our average down. We're right around hovering that 2% range, which is well below the industry average, is about 11.6. And the last two are copiers. This isn't so much with the cyber stuff, but what we did this year is we went to secure print with our badges. This helps us reduce anything just sitting on the copiers that could be confidential that no one else should be looking at. The secure print option, basically it forces the user to go and they stand at the copier while their print job prints, so it's not anyone else that can just accidentally come in and pick it up. And the last part, which we're going to be implementing over the next couple months slowly to try and ease people into it, is MFA, which is multi-factor authentication. It's become a very big thing. We've been using it like in the tech department a lot, just for a lot of our stuff, but now we're going to start rolling it out to teachers and mainly like the district office at first and see how that goes. But it adds one more layer, one more thing, so people can't just guess your password and get into everything. So.
Well, could you give an example of multi-factor authentication for people who don't maybe know?
Yeah, the biggest one most people will probably recognize is you'll type your password into, let's say, your online banking account, and then your bank sends you a text message with a 6-digit code or something. So that text message or an SMS is considered your second factor of authentication. It's something you know, which is typically your password, something you have, which is either that text message or a key, or something that you are. So that would be like a fingerprint scanner, a retina scanner. We're not that fancy, so it's going to be something we know and something we have. The biggest thing we're going to try is, either like a MFA authenticator app, where it's one that's on your phone. A lot of people know that one, or predetermined codes, like a one-time password. So that's that. We're just doing whatever we can, just so we don't get caught
Yeah.
with bad passwords or anything like that. So we're just really trying to tighten down the screws wherever we can and make the school as safe as possible.
Anybody else have other questions for Bo related to that? If you remember, I think about this time of year last year, we had Bo come in and talk about student security, about the efforts that we have for, like Smooth Wall and so on, that protect students from going to dangerous sites and things like that. So I thought it would be good to come back, and again, it's been a big issue in the world of education here the last 6 months. At CISA 11 last spring, they had some presenters come in, and actually they got canceled for a kind of an emergency on their end. But we heard from a local district in our CISA that got hacked this spring, and the superintendent told the story about it, and it's just an absolute nightmare. And it immediately involves get the FBI, and you've got the state, all kinds of state agencies, and it's actually a part of the National Guard that actually comes out and helps you with your restoring your network and investigating and so on. So it's not, listening to him, he said, yeah, it's not a situation you ever want to find yourself in. And I think too, with the testing that's been done, I think credit to Bo, the results came back as, obviously always things to work on, but that our system was pretty strong as it is. And credit to our staff, because a lot of the phishing emails, people are reporting them to Bo, hey, this looks suspicious, or this looks funny, and every once in a while we get one to hit, but still good efforts all around. So yeah, just like I said, wanted to give Bo the opportunity to spotlight all the work he's been doing in this area. So
Yes, Greg.
Bo, so like in the position that you're in, taking care of all of our tech needs, how do you stay up on that? Are there kind of a revolving classes that you had? How do you stay current? How do you know what to do?
Luckily, a lot of what we employ is considered SaaS, a software as a service. So instead of having like a physical person in the building doing it or having to learn it all, we'll subscribe to like a service that does almost all the heavy lifting for us. Then I just click buttons. So most of the work is being done on their side, and I just get to go in and you can see the reports and such.
Right on.
A lot, and it's luckily with like the MFA stuff, we have the local CISA, so there's a lot of other IT nerds like me that like to look at that stuff, and it's been helpful to be able to ask them and just listen to what they have to say. And then, yeah, I guess it's just kind of a day-to-day thing.
I think that network, like you're saying, being part of CISA and going to the regular meetings of IT professionals and just hearing, what's going on in the world of IT right now. And Bo subscribes to, he gets emails with information. We have some of the softwares we work with, like Skyward, they'll send us things saying, hey, here's a trend you should be aware of. You may want to look into this with your organization. So,
and it's one heck of a lot of Googling most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to compare what this one does that this one doesn't. Google's been a very good tool for that.
Do you hear hackers starting to use AI in the future?
Not yet.
Not losing
luckily.
sleep over it?
Oh, I'm hoping that. I'm hoping not. They do have like I've heard the word on the water cooler is like the bad actors. They'll kind of package like an attack, if you will, and then they'll just sell it. So someone else will subscribe to that guy, and then they can just employ it wherever they want.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of gross that way, but I guess
The local district that was affected that I referenced before, the hackers there were from Russia. That's where it originated from. So, and it was a ransom thing. It was like, well, we'll release your information if you pay us this money. So,
those are the worst kind of
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
They hurt. Luckily for us, we have a lot of stuff in the cloud
yeah.
environment, so we're not out, it's really not much sensitive data that's held here. Skyward is all posted off-site. All we have really is accounts here that the only thing they're good for is within the building. So if someone were able to get that, it's as simple as going in and just deleting the account, or in our, like if there was a ransomware attack and it took everything down, we would take our cold copy backup and just restore from the day before. And, you know, I'm speaking ideally, of course, hopefully a couple of days and be back up and running, but we're very fortunate that industries are just pushing it's like all the liability is getting pushed out, so that's really nice.
Well, Bo, thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for sharing with us.
We're trying.
Anybody got any other questions for Bo? You gonna stick around for the rest of the meeting, Bo?
No.
Made him speechless again.
You don't have to. Thanks for coming
We're gonna
in.
make things happen.
Thank you, Bo.
Thank you.
All right, next item of business is into our board business. First one is the approval of the resignations or retirements.
Okay, so kind of busy time of year here as we got into the summer. So it's been quite a while since we've had our last meeting, just the way the calendar fell. So I do have a handful of resignations here. I've got a couple of teachers. Josh Wallace is a 5th grade teacher, accepted an opportunity in another district, kind of also family related reasons, and then Kristen Wallace, his wife, K-12 vocal and general music teacher. So the two of them have relocated and accepted opportunities in other places. We have Katie Schroyer, who has been a junior kindergarten paraprofessional originally, and then became junior kindergarten and special ed para. She's been with us a number of years. Don't quote me on the number, but I would venture to say about 8 years probably. I'm just guessing that number. And then we have a few co-curriculars. Brad Kress is resigning his positions as assistant girls basketball coach and assistant softball coach. We have Kristen Labrie, who's just resigning her prom advisor position only. And then the other one was early last week. So Pat Lilly is retiring here in a few weeks after 28 years. So Pat's been a custodian in this district. He started out at the old high school. I've heard him tell stories about the move to the quote-unquote new high school here in '97. And then switched over to the elementary school a number of years ago, probably 15 years ago or so. But Pat's been a custodian. He's been a substitute bus driver. He's helped out coaching here and there in different places. Worked as an evening custodian, day custodian, both the buildings. So he's done and seen it all in that realm of our district. So many thanks to Pat. He's had a very long career here of dedicated service, and so personally, I think on behalf of the staff too, thank you to Pat for his years of service.
You have to forgive me, my computer went down. So,
Oh, sorry.
I will entertain a motion then for all of those, or we don't need any.
I move to approve the resignation and retirement. Second.
Been properly moved and seconded to
Just approve the resignations.
my mind just went blank.
Yeah,
To approve
here
the
it is.
resignations and the hires. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. The next item of business then is the approval of our hires. Or did you go through them already?
Nope, I got that here next. So, also, good news is we got a number of few people leaving us. We've also got some new hires too, so that's exciting. So we've got goes back to a resignation from the June meeting, but we've hired a 3rd grade teacher, Erica Dorsey. And Erica is familiar in our district. She student taught here. She used to substitute here a number of years ago. And then she's been teaching in the Richmond School District for the last 6 years, and she lives in our district, and her oldest son already attends the elementary school. So Erica Dorsey will be a 3rd grade teacher for us. And then the 5th grade math and science position, of course, we posted it right away when we had Mr. Wallace's resignation weeks ago. So we're recommending Scott Pedersen for that position. He's got a number of years' experience at different places in the field of K-12 education, but also like post-secondary education. Most recently, he's been at Rauschalt School District for about the past 5 years, and from this area and wants to get back closer to family. So it's Scott at the 5th grade, and then we have from our last meeting, we did go through the process of getting applications and then interviews for our new pre-K through 12 assistant principal / athletic director position, and we interviewed candidates back in mid-late July, and committee recommended me to offer and come to an agreement with Dale Rosine. So Dale Rosine will be, he's already working in that position. He jumped right in and is getting things done. And then our Junior Warriors paraprofessional, this position's been posted for Erica Echo. She replaces Corey Scott, who moved to our high school night custodian last month. We've got our elementary special education paraprofessional, Desiree Wishart, replacing an opening that we had there. And then with our recent change, you've just heard about Katie Schroyer resigning. She was half-time Junior Warriors, half-time special education. Her counterpart, also, she has another counterpart who's half-time Junior Warriors, half-time special education. She's going to move to full-time Junior Warriors. So that created the opening, or what did I say? Oh, junior kindergarten. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. I was misspeaking with Junior Warriors. Junior kindergarten. And so that made a regular full opening in special education para world. So that were offered to Lori Frenchu. So we got Erica Dorsey, 3rd grade teacher, Scott Pedersen, 5th grade teacher, Dale Rosine, assistant principal / athletic director, and then Erica Echo, Desiree Wishart, Lori Frenchu as paraprofessionals.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the new hires.
Second?
It's been properly moved and second to approve our hires. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The next item of business is the approval of our fall coaching roster.
List of our coaches there is attached. It's nice to say that there's been not a lot of changes this summer, so not much action here. Pretty much the same crew returning. Just one thing, still looking for a C squad volleyball coach, and there's a little bit of action going on there. They start next week, so hopefully we'll have somebody in place in the next few days.
Then I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve the fall coaching roster.
Second?
It's been approved and seconded and approved. It's been moved and seconded to approve the fall coaching roster. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. The next item of business is our 23-24 year-end district budget update.
Okay, so there's a document attached, but I made paper copies because I know sometimes it's just easier to look at a paper copy with some of this stuff here.
I just remember to keep my computer alive.
Yeah, just keep it with So, thanks. This is just a little worksheet that I use, and it's a lot of information overload when I just throw it in front of you like that, so I'll kind of walk you through it. But it's also instructional for the next thing we'll talk about when we talk about the budget for next year. So the column that's highlighted there, so this is an exercise I've started doing at the end of the fiscal year. So the fiscal year ends June 30th, and then by the end of July, we have to have, basically, I don't want to say our book's pretty much closed out. And at the end of July, by the 30th, is when we have to make our decision is if and how much we're going to make a transfer of, if we have unspent dollars, if we can transfer those into Fund 46, which is our facility fund. And remember that by transferring them into Fund 46, they are counted by the DPI as an expense, which is a benefit to us because we want to spend our money. If you leave unspent dollars, then that next year you get penalized a bit for that. So Fund 46 has been a beautiful thing for us. So I made this little worksheet up, and it calculates, and I can look at. We get to the very end of July, and we look at how much do we have any unspent dollars? Do we have a surplus? And this year again we did. And so we had that pink down below, underspent $147,000. Remember, that's after we purchased that bus too, right? So we bought the bus for $126, and we had $147 unspent. So then played with the numbers a little bit, and you're trying to balance out making sure that we spend down our dollars, but I'm also have the goal to add a little bit to the fund balance if we can, but you don't want to add too much because then you're underspending too much. So we ended up making, long and short, a transfer of $130,000 into Fund 10. So if we go down to the bottom where there's those Fund 46 little summary down there. So we had a balance in Fund 46 of $460,000 at the end of June. A transfer in the 130, that gives us a total of $591,000 practically. And then our estimated cost for projects this year. So we approved last meeting the fire system update. So that's $193,000. So just projecting that, that even after that fire system, we'd be sitting at a balance of just under $400,000 in our Fund 46. So I think that's a good, healthy place to be, where it's kind of an emergency fund, or again, just necessary things that are top priorities here as we go through. So then I walked up to the next part. Then is, so if you look at our expenses. So go up to the top chart as you go across historically from 17-18 over to 23-24 and 24-25 budgeted. So the second row down there is Fund 10 expenses. And so what you'll notice, like the last couple of years, 21-22, our expenses were $8.1 million. 22-23, look how it jumps up, right? $8.8 million. And why is that? Well, that's when we passed the referendum. And that's ESSER money. We were spending a lot of ESSER money in 22-23. Okay, and then you look at 23-24, jumps up again. And again, what is that? That's ESSER money being spent down. And it's, we've taken that referendum money and made those investments in our staff, which is what, we said we wanted to do with that money and needed to do with that. But then you notice next year, so the budget that we have, I'm giving you a little preview here, the expenses drop back down to $8.8 million, back down another $300,000. So that is that ESSER money going away. Okay, so that's we've been on a spending spree the last couple of years because we've had ESSER money to spend. So that again, as much as possible, trying to make one-time purchases of things like curriculum and books and technology and so on. So then that's displaced all those expenses out of our regular budget. So that's freed up the regular budget to have things like surpluses at the end of the year, or some of the other things that we've been able to purchase an extra bus. We've bought we've had a lot of buses the last few years, which has been a good investment, I think. So, but now kind of the big story is the party's over, so to speak, with that that big spending. And now it's kind of returning more back to a normal budget. And so then when Eve and I were working on the budget here this spring and summer, and Lori was still involved with that up until the last several weeks here, we're really trying to recalibrate our budget back to a kind of more tight, more realistic, like accurate, with all that kind of slush of that ESSER money flowing through it. So if you related to that too, if you look down the column on the left, that's Fund 10 annual expenses change. You notice how there's percentages going across the bottom. So 102, 100. So basically, you see like that accounts for a 2% increase from the year before, a 5% increase. So in 21-22, for example, 103% of the prior year's expenses. We had a 3% increase in expenses. And again, look at 22-23, we had an 8% increase, right? That's that spending spree you're talking about. And then this year, 3% above that. And now look at next year, it drops down to, a 3, we're reducing our budget by 3%. So just kind of gives you that picture historically. So now the last thing is, go up to the third row down, Fund 10 balance as a percent of expenses. So this is where you take, okay, how much money do we have in our year-end fund balance, and what did we spend that year? And this is that factor that a lot of schools track to say, what's our fund balance look like? So a goal has been to boost that up a little bit. So you see that, and I had shared with you last year how I had felt that it had bumped up more than this. Well, I realized as we were going through our year-end process, so the expense of when you transfer money into Fund 46, that's considered an expense. So last year when we made that, whatever, $600,000 transfer into Fund 46, that's an expense at the end of the year. So that's one of the reasons those, that's That's all that money that we have, and that's what's driving that. So actually, you notice the fund balance as percent of expense dropped in 23-24. But if you go up and look at the actual number, the very top row, you look at every year, 21-22 we had 1.4 million fund balance, 22-23 1.506, 23-24 1.523, right? So the number, the actual dollar value in there has not gone down. We're still building up our fund balance. In fact, we added $91,000 to it last year. That was a pretty big addition. So the number is actually going up. But as a percentage of our expenses, it dropped because we spent so much money with all that ESSER stuff coming through. But now next year, if you look at 24-25 with the budget, even by doing nothing, if we add nothing else to that year-end fund balance of 1.523 million, the fund balance as a percent jumps back up to 17.2 simply because our expenses are going to go down. So just to keep that in perspective, when people say, "Oh, your fund balance has gone way down," well, that's a function of just the spending. Expenses have been so high the last 2 years, and that's that's a really an artificially high number.
So, question, Chris, they have 10 balances is basically the checkbook at the end of the year, right?
It's not the checkbook. It's how much. It's not actual cash in the bank. It's not that. It is the theoretical balance that you have of expenses versus revenues, but.
Okay.
And I could show you guys a chart sometime. The different, the actual dollars and revenues that come in from the state come in at this uneven pace. You get a big lump payment here, and then you have your expenses kind of stay steady all year, but your revenues come in like this and like this, and so your actual money in the bank is not this. This is just the on paper balance. Yeah. That's a great question.
So, the reason I asked that question is, so it doesn't need to be zero. That's not where you actually balance it. Where you balance it would be a year from now. If it's exactly the same, then it would be a zero.
That would be a zero.
Okay.
Yep, that would be a zero. Yep, growth and zero deficit. Yep. So that's why I have it projected as right now. It's a balanced budget for next year.
Okay.
Great question. Yep. And that's a hard concept for a lot of for even school districts, and so we and in our situation we are a high aided district, so we depend on aid from the state. We are a district that wants to have a decent fund balance. If you're one of those districts that gets like nothing from the state, you live in a very property wealthy like lake country, you get no money from the state and it's all local property, those districts carry very low fund balances. So, and why that is a whole nother conversation that I probably would have to brush up on a little bit before I
take a couple of classes.
It makes a lot of sense when I'm listening to it, but right now I couldn't pull that up. But anyway, so I hope that's helpful to kind of see some big picture. Questions or?
All right. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, just information. No action needed.
Okay, the next item of business then is the approval of our preliminary budget.
Okay, so this, again, I made paper copies just because it's kind of hard to look at all those numbers on the screen. So I decided this afternoon I made paper copies. So here you go. There's those need signatures. Here you go, you guys. And I'll try to, just keep this as try to keep it as a high level thing. So there's a few things in this package. So the first couple sheets are the revenue limit worksheet. I'll just briefly go over that. Then the next document, there's like several sheets, 4 or 5 sheets that are the preliminary budget that I'm presenting and asking you to approve before the annual meeting. And then the last couple pages are that same budget. It's just in the newspaper version, which is a stripped down, simplified version. So I'll just try to walk us through all of these things. And I would say, like, big picture, big takeaways, like I've said already, we've been on a quote-unquote spending spree because of having to spend down that ESSER money. So that's been an artificial thing. It's a little more back to reality. And so, once again, I'll say we went through the budget our budget's got, like, what is it, Eve, 1,500 lines in it for all, so it's a big process, but we go through every line, and it's, I think a nice, tight, accurate budget that is still budgeted conservatively. By that meaning, budget expenses a little high, pessimistically, and budget revenues a little low wherever you can, to be conservative about things. So that the hope is that the preliminary budget is always worse than the actual budget, always turns out better. So, but it's a good budget, so it's balanced. So the other big story with our budget situation is our declining enrollment. Okay, that is a big factor for us going forward. So, and that's another topic, but that is the reality for us right now. When we're graduating last year wasn't a big class, but next year, we're going to graduate 40 some students in this year's senior class. I can't remember, high 40s. And we have some tiny classes entering kindergarten. Like this year's kindergarten is 24 students. Last year's kindergarten, 24 students. This year's JK has 32, so it's still small, but at least bigger. But so we've got some significant decline there, and that's a very real thing. So I'll just kind of walk us through. I put some asterisks that I drew in there. Those are, for the most part, next to all the things that are still unknowns. These are all estimates, right? So the first one down there is line 6 is our average, our 2024 enrollment. That's an estimate. We won't know that for sure until the third Friday in September. But there's two concepts there. Line 2, it's a rolling 3-year average for last year, 21, 22, 23. Your rolling 3-year average of FTEs, or number of students. And then line 6 is your rolling 3-year average for 22, 23, 24. And then it looks at the difference. And then if you have declining enrollment, there is a consideration given there for you to get some money to offset that in the formula. So we'll get to that later. So, there it is, line 10B. $144,000 exemption for declining enrollment. So that helps us to offset that decline. The next one toward the bottom, the next star down there, is the fall property values, and it says assumes 10% growth, which last year, what were we, 21? The year before, was it, I can't remember, 15, 17%. So 10 is kind of considered kind of middle of the road, somewhat conservative. So that's just the total value of all the properties all together in all of our parts of our district, $432 million. And that number is important only because it doesn't impact how much we can tax or how little we can tax. It only impacts the levy at the end of the day. So the amount of dollars that you tax divided by that number there is just determines what your levy is. Next page. Sorry, does anyone have questions in that front one? Next page. So just kind of starting at the top there, that's $6.773 million. That's our base revenue from last year. That's kind of reflective of what we spent. And then the formula shows there, how many students of your base membership last year, and then how many, you go down to line 6, that's your base current average revenue current average of number of students this year. And you see there's a 12 student difference, so then that goes in that formula. That's where you get that offsetting. One thing I want to point out back up to near the top. So you see line 4 on Go where it's yellow and it's $11,000. Mm-hmm. So what that is what's called the low revenue ceiling. Well, I call it the low revenue basement. Basically, it means that no district in the state can have a per pupil revenue smaller than $11,000 per kid. Okay, that's the base level. That got bumped up big time in the last budget, so that's been a good thing. So if you go up 2 lines to line 3, and you see in the green it's $11,678.64. That's Clear Lake's base revenue per member. So that's the referendum difference right there. That extra $678.64 per kid. That's our referendum that was passed. That puts us even above. I mean, we were at the bottom at that low revenue ceiling for years, and now it vaulted us up a little bit. So. But the thing to be aware of, because it's a recurring referendum, it's always there. The thing to be aware of, though, because it's recurring, that money after the first year just got rolled right into our equalization aid formula. So as our enrollment declines, that $800,000 a year actually declines, right? Because it's accounted for in the state formula. So we get a smaller share of that over time because of our declining enrollment.
So then that 12,000 on line 5 is with 325 that the state increased it this year?
Yes. Yep. So now, thank you, Corey. Yeah. So line 4A is an additional $325 per kid this year. Yep. And then that rolls into line 5, which is $12,000. So it's actually $12,003 per student in Clear Lake. Multiply that times the 568 kids, and you get that 6.818 maximum, revenue limit authority. However, then you go down and there are other exemptions. So there's non-recurring exemptions, which we don't have any, and then there's there's recurring exemptions. We don't have any of those, and then we have non-recurring exemptions. So down in line 10, we have an additional $760,000 worth of non-recurring exemptions. So the letter B there under 10 is the $144,000. Again, that's all set. That's as our declining enrollment. Well, it's not set. It will vary a little bit depending what our actual numbers are. Line C is our energy efficiency exemption. So that relates to Fund 38. That's the project back in 2013-14 at the elementary school. And then we have the line H, which is the private school voucher aid deduction, which is, so we get $122,844 estimated taken out of our budget to pay for vouchers and private school vouchers around the state. This is a exemption, then we get to add that number back into our revenues to offset it. So it's a net zero expense for the district. However, it still costs money. So they're taking the money out and then they put the money back in.
When did they start putting the money back in, Chris?
I don't know, 3 years ago maybe.
Because that used to really sting back before.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing about that number.
Really stings. They got like $3,300 per kid. We get $325.
Yeah, they got a lot more dollars per student than we did in the private schools. Yep. The thing about that letter H number 2 is that we don't know that number till mid-October. So that's an estimate, and that's a crazy thing that we don't get to find that out till then. And it's DPI's hands are tied too, because it's the law, the way the law is written. They don't get that. They can't calculate that information till after the equalization aid formula comes out. So our total revenue limit is $7,579,023. So number 12 then, A through D, that's our state aid. Okay, so $5,172,000 of it comes from the state. And the red number, $5.16 million, we'll find that exact number out in mid-October. So that's an estimate right now from the state. Okay, so then you subtract out the total revenue limit minus the state aid, and that gives you the $2.4 million local that we can raise. So then that's all calculated out in that red formula below. So I'll start with the smaller one. So letter B, that's the Fund 38. That's our non-referendum debt that relates back to that energy program at the elementary that funded half of that program. And then 15A is our referendum approved debt. That's Fund 39. That's the referendum to remodel the elementary from 2013. And then the other thing I'll make note of is 15B. If you guys recall, so this community services, that's community ed, okay? We've got a $50,000 levy there. We have levied $30,000 out of that fund for the last eons. I don't know, since I've been in Clear Lake, so probably 20 years we've levied $30,000. This year I'm proposing we levy a little bit more because if you recall, we're going to offer the free 4K wraparound service. Okay, so this $20,000 extra won't pay for all of that this first year, but it'll pay for part, and then I recommend we step it up again next year, another 20, and then that would pay for it. Because we have a fund balance in Fund 80, so we said we would, strategy-wise, we'd step it up partway this year, partway next year, so it's not such a big hit. So, what's left over then is the $1.925 million, and then all that totals up to the local tax levy, 2.946. That's a 6.815 mill rate. So that's a lot of words and a lot of numbers. So trying to keep it high level. What questions, comments?
6.8 sure is a nice number.
That's a low mill rate.
So the $50,000 for community service, that's for what again, Chris?
So that funds like Junior Warriors childcare. It doesn't fund it all. I shouldn't say that. Junior Warriors is much. It's based a lot of self-funded. You know, parents pay fees to bring their kids to daycare, and that helps. You know, that pays for the staff and so on. But again, we're offering the 4K wraparound just with 4K students for that half-day program for free this year, so it would help offset that. But Fund 80 has also things like all the community ed programs. So, you know, swimming lessons, those are also supported by user fees. Any of the community ed, like community theater is part of that budget. But most of community ed is self-supporting, and so that's why we've just levied that $30,000 every year, because we don't really need more revenue. Most of it just kind of pays for itself. And over time, there's about a $90,000 fund balance in there, which is, I think, one of the reasons why we said we could probably afford to do this and not offset it all. So.
Well, the reason I bring that up is just to shed a little light on that fact, because we've lost students over time because we didn't have that program in place and our neighbors did.
Yep.
So one of the questions that I'm just going to throw out there is, do we do any advertising with that? I mean, do all the businesses on one of their applications say daycare, or this program is, you know what I mean, so we can start gaining back
Yeah,
students?
we've done
As
some.
time goes by.
And feel free to jump in, Teresa, if you got. But we've done marketing since we decided to do that in, I think it was April or May. We've marketed it mainly, you know, to this year's 4K parents who are enrolled, to let them know, like, if you're interested in doing this. But definitely, you know, we've put it on our social media and, you know, on our webpage and things like that. I think it's going to take a little time for the word to spread, you know. So like now, next year's parents who are considering where to send their kids to 4K, now it's important that they know about it, I think. So we got to keep the word out,
Right.
and marketing it. Yeah, it's something I would, you know, if we could have done it 8 years ago, you know, maybe it would have stemmed some of our declining enrollment, perhaps. I don't know. It's hard to say. But good questions. So that's the revenue limit worksheet. So that's where the money comes from. And then if we flip the page now to the actual budget part, you know, this is organized by fund. So if you remember, so Fund 10 is the big one, and that's our first one. So the yellow line is general fund, Fund 10. That's our big, you know, major budget area. Biggest source of revenue, biggest area of spending. That's our general fund. And then we have Fund 21. That is like the words are. That's like our student activity accounts, or the activity accounts that we have. Not all just student accounts, but activity accounts. Fund 27 is our special education fund. So anything related to special ed students and staff goes through there. And then Fund 38 and 39 are our debt service funds. That's the bonds that we had that, you know, passed in 2013. Fund 46, Capital Projects Fund. Again, that's our facilities fund that we can use. We can put money in there and then only use it for facility projects. Food service is Fund 50. Community service that we were just talking about, that's Fund 80. And that's all the funds that we have. Oh, sorry, we have Fund 60, which is on a separate page. That's our scholarship fund. And again, that's really kind of like Fund 21. It's not really part of our budget. It's just money in and money out. We operate it, but the money comes from other sources and it's paid out. It's, you know, so it's the donations to the scholarship foundation, the gifts and the interest, and then the expenditures are the scholarships that go out to students. So. Okay, so I can go back and just, again, I'll try to keep it high level because there's obviously a lot here. So the top number is our beginning fund balance. So it's $1.651 million. So you'll notice it's different than that first worksheet I handed you that had with the colors on it from Fund 46 transfer, which is $1.524 million. The difference is these dollars on this budget worksheet do not yet reflect the $130,000 that were transferred out into Fund 46. So that expense is not reflected here. And the auditor said, wait for us to do that because I said, well, do we change it? You know. Because really, it's just our beginning balance. So it's, you know, we have a balanced budget, so it's going to begin and end the same. They said, nope, leave it as it is, because until they process that change, they want us to just leave it as is. So that's why you might, you know, if it's confusing, I caught that right away. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not the fund balance I had down. But So there's that. So the first page here is revenues, and the line 12, the first big one, again, that's our levy, our local tax levy from the state. Go down to line 20. I'm just going to hit highlights here of big dollars. Line 20, that is that $482,000. That is for open enrolled students coming into our district. So we get a payment from other districts for that. And then go down to line 34. That's our general state aid. Again, $5.16 million from the state. That's the majority of our source of income. Line 37, that's AGR. So that's the AGR aid that we get for having the 18-to-1 ratio. And then line 39, the $699,000, that's just like a whole collection of other state revenues that we have for different kinds of grants and sparsity aid, transportation aid, all kinds of things. So that's another big chunk, again, coming from the state. Federal aids is the part down below. This would be Title I. This would be grants from the federal government, the SRSA grants, things like that. This is what's included under the federal sources. Any questions on that first page about some of those revenues? So if you flip to page, I guess it's page 4, I numbered the pages at the bottom. Our total revenues, $8.815 million. And then the next whole section here is expenditures. So that's broken down into the first section there is instruction. So that's not only the costs of staff, instructional staff, but also anything related to curriculum. And then the next part is support services. So that's everything from, facilities and operations of custodians and buses and administrators and pupil services is all in that second category there. And then the last part there, non-program transactions. So one thing I want to point out this year. So if you go to line 78, interfund transfers. So we have last year, that we did interfund transfers of $703,000. Next year, you notice the number's quite a bit higher. So I'll get to this with Fund 50, but Fund 50 but we have budgeted at a deficit for next year, $125,000 deficit. That's food service, okay? And I can talk about that in a second when we get to Fund 50. But revenues were at all-time highs a couple of years ago with the pandemic aid. Revenues have gone way down. Food costs have gone way up. We've got a little bit of staffing that we did have paid for with ESSER going back to the pandemic that we are moving to Fund 10. So we've got some more expenses there. So I can get into that more. So we have budgeted into our Fund 10 budget a $125,000 transfer to Fund 50 to balance Fund 50. And then we also have a interfund transfer of, I believe it's $780,000 into Fund 27. That's a huge transfer we do every year into Fund 27 to pay for special ed. So the state and federal, they reimburse about 33% of the cost of special education. Districts are left to pay the rest. So that's one of those things. So I left some materials on about, budget. This is a budget year, this next coming fiscal year and at the state. And that's one of the areas where there seems to be a little bit of traction of legislators listening to, hey, maybe we do need to reimburse schools more for special education. So we're hopeful that's an optimistic area where maybe they will bump that up a little bit more. They bumped it up a little bit last time, not much. So that's a big part of our upcoming budget is those Fund 50 and Fund 27 transfers are bigger than they have been in the past. And then that line 79, that $987,000 instructional service payments. So that is the biggest part of it is open enrollment out. That accounts for 600 and some thousand, if I recall. So we're at a negative with open enroll out versus in. But it also, that is every kind of instructional service payment that is anything that's not a human being in the district. So payments to CISA, payments for software, payments for curriculums, payments for Skyward, and things like that. So there's a lot of things that go into that great big number there. Eve and I were looking it up to see that. So that's the big one. So, but anyway, Fund 10, we balanced it. Revenue and expenses, $8.815,886. So, I could go through the other ones probably a little more quickly, I hope. So, Fund 21, the next one there, that is, again, that's the money in, money out. That's just activity funds. So there's no tax dollars or anything like that goes towards that. Fund 27, the highlight there, I'll point out the third line down, $780,000. That's a transfer in from Fund 10. That's budgeted in. You notice last year it was 703, the year before 601. So you see increases in costs for special education. That's increased staffing, that we've had to add, things like that. So you'll also notice Fund 27 beginning balance is 0. You're not allowed to carry a fund balance in 27. That's how it starts out, as a 0. Page 5. Again, kind of shows some of the bigger revenue sources. We get state aid for special education, $295,000. We get federal aid, line 127 for special education, $164,000 there. And then the expenses are, again, staffing, curriculum, any expenses associated. We take a portion of our pupil services staff, so that would be like counselors, school psychologists, and that is also paid for through Special Ed Fund 27. Instructional staff services, paraprofessionals paid for, if they're special ed related through there. So, but again, we balanced out that fund with that transfer. So we're hopeful that if costs are a little bit, if we can keep costs tight. Again, I tried to do a conservative budget, overestimate the expenses a little bit. Hopefully that transfer doesn't have to be as big. Same thing with food service. Had a great meeting with Tara Petter, our food service director, and talked about budget ideas for next year. And so if we can, have that come out a little bit better, that benefits Fund 10 because it's a smaller transfer to balance it out. Fund 38 and 39 are debt service funds. Those are not balanced. You notice that there's not a balanced budget there, and that's okay because there's a beginning balance in there. Fund 38 and 39 expenses and revenues strictly follow our debt service schedule. So that's dictated by the referendum, how much we have to pay out every year on our bonds to the banks, and then how much we're allowed to levy basically matches it. But the funny thing is that its revenue follows the calendar year, I think, is it, Eve? I always get this back. One of them, yeah. Revenue follows the calendar year, but the expenses follow the fiscal year. So there's always this little bit of mismatch of that. So, but Fund 38 and 39 are no-brainers. They just kind of write themselves. Fund 46, again, that's the capital service. And again, you'll notice in here that it's inaccurate because it does not show our $130,000 deposit in there yet, right? So that second line, their ending fund balance, drops down to $267,900. Well, that's not accurate. We know that there's going to be an additional $130,000 in there. Fund 50 is food service. Revenues are down. We also look at our expenses are down too. So looking at ways to trim finance, trim expenses there. We had a budget report that Eve ran. Our revenues in 21-22, that was the last year that they had free lunch for all kids and free breakfast for all kids. Our revenues were $632,000 in 21-22. So they were really high reimbursement rates for those federal meals. Our expenses in 22-23 dropped to $548,000 from $632,000, and then next year they'll drop down to $519,000. So that's the revenues are dropping. Part of it too is a little bit of fewer students. We also, I think, you guys passed the food service, like the costs for student meals and adult meals last time. I think we've recalibrated that a little bit better. I think last year we undershot a little bit. I think we probably should have increased a little bit more, but we're also trying to be careful not to jolt families with a big jump any year either. So I think that's recalibrated a little bit better. So I think that'll help our revenue side somewhat as well. So optimistic that that'll turn out a little bit better. And our expenses, again, food prices have absolutely skyrocketed. We can all speak to personal experience, at the store. It's no different for the school buying food. We've also, again, we have some staff, a staff that was under the ESSER funding and is now moving into our regular fund. So that's part of that too. And that person was hired a number of years ago during the pandemic. So,
Is that going to continue that way, Chris, into the future?
the level of staffing?
No,
Or
the deficit.
We sure hope not. I think we need to, continue to have our revenues be what they should be with meal prices. But there's a formula for student prices, and we're good there. I think we bumped up our adult prices a little bit more aggressively, probably how we should. And then we got to continue to look at those expenses and costs. Yeah, because we can't run at a deficit. It's got to balance out. So.
Okay.
Fund 27, you can always count on that transfer in. Fund 50, we don't count on that, and we don't want to have that going forward, So, community service fund, we talked about that quite a bit already. We've got a $90,000 balance to start out, and you notice the ending balance, it's not balanced, it runs down a little bit, but that's planned, that's calculated. We knew that we would drop a little bit. Also, we have very conservative revenues figured in there. Our revenue last year was 108. We've got it projected quite a bit. That's just money in and money out. That's costs for classes that kids take, that adults take, swimming lessons, things like so. That that fund is kind of separated from the rest of the district. So, lots of stuff. The last page is our Fund 60 scholarship fund. Once again, that's an outside of the district. We make an estimate of what the gifts will be based on past history. We budgeted $0 for interest. We know that won't be the case. But again, it's a money in, money out fund. It's and again, budget out the expenses are about $1,000 a year for the mailings that they do to get donations, and then figure to hand out about $20,000 in scholarships. So that's we balance out that fund, money in, money out. So other questions? So just to kind of, and while you're thinking about your questions, recalibrate the process is, we have this preliminary budget. It's an estimate. There's a lot of variables that we don't know yet, from student counts, open enrollment in and out, what the state equalized aid formula is actually going to turn out to be, what the property values are actually going to be. All those things are still going to come to us this fall, but we passed this preliminary budget now. This is what we'll bring to the annual meeting to discuss and project to people. This is what we think it's going to be. And then we'll come back in October, and we have that special meeting on the last Monday, or the second to last Monday, I think, this year in October. And then we'll have all that data, and I will have accurate numbers for revenue, and then we'll adjust the budget to balance, and then that's what I'll bring to you in October. So this is the best estimate we have right now.
Chris, thanks for taking the time. We're going through that. This is our opportunity as a board to take a look at what's going on from the budget standpoint, and it's one of our biggest responsibilities that we have to take care of in the chairs that we're sitting in. So thank you for taking the time to go through that with us.
Thanks for listening.
Does anybody have any questions on the numbers themselves? Does anybody have any questions about 10,000 foot view questions pertaining to some of the directions of some of the accounts? Or if I could just interject, I'm just going to touch upon this again one more time, that daycare thing and how that's going to lend to getting more people. One of the biggest things that I think that we need to deal with as a district is our declining enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
And as time goes by, we keep making these improvements, and our community has stepped behind us and given us more money to spend to make improvements. And I've seen that we've made a ton of improvements to how we operate here in our district. And I thought we were a shining star before we did all these changes. And I think that somehow we need to put some energy into letting the world know that Clear Lake is doing all these things and is taking care of our kids the way that we think we ought to be, and the way that I think that we ought to be. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out as we go through this, because it just sheds lights on it, on a number of things, I guess. So any other questions on budget? All right, then we'll get back in gear, and I'll ask for an approval.
I move to approve the 24-25 preliminary budget.
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded to approve the 24-25 preliminary budget. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The next item of business is the 24-25 teacher employee handbook.
Okay, so we've got a number of handbooks here. These should be, the teacher handbook here, there are no changes in it except for, as I noted in the notes, the dates, and I added the new strategic, mission, vision, values, and plan into it, and the co-curricular rates that were approved back in the spring, so there are no changes to it.
Then I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the 24-25 teacher employee handbook.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The next item of business is the 24-25 support staff employee
Okay.
handbook.
This one, just a couple of minor things. So in the document itself, I highlighted them, but I got two things that I'd like to recommend to the board. Of course, I didn't write page numbers down in my notes, but
Page 5 is your probationary period.
thank you, Christy. So page 5, and it's the numbered pages on the document. So page 5, like at the bottom of the page, as it says. So we've had for many years, as long as I've been around here and have known about it, the first 12 months of employment is considered a probationary period, and employees are paid at 95% of the full rate for their first 12 months. And again, it's been considered a probationary period, and you can see also if they quit or terminated during the probationary period, they don't accrue any sick leave, vacation, etc. I would propose that there's been a lot of questions about that. Why do we do that? We've had some newer employees not really understand it. Why do I get paid less? I think this is it's a product of a number of years ago, and I think it was a different labor market, and I think it's been a little bit more of a tougher questions of why do we do this. There was talk of do we completely do away with it. We kind of talked about it internally. I think where we arrived at is I think we should have something. It's a little bit of a trial period, but shortening it down to 3 months. I think it's been hard for some of our new employees to wrap their head around 12 months, especially if they got hired mid-year. They come back for their second year and they're going, oh wait, I'm still not at the full rate, and they don't quite understand. And I think lowering it to 3 months, I think still leaves a little bit of a cushion and a safety net in there, and then just kind of prove yourself, prove that you're a reliable employee and that you are doing what you need to do, but yet I think just maybe a little more reflective of the current labor market. So that's one thought I had. I don't know if questions, comments about that, or...
So was that brought to us by the committee?
The committee has talked about it. I'd say it's been more brought to us by employees asking about it, newer employees.
What do you hope to gain by a probationary period when you're already an at-will employer?
I think for the tenured employees, I think it's an older concept.
Yeah.
It's like, why does the new person make as much as me? I've been here for 15 years. Why do they walk in the door and make as much as me? And I think it was a year long, and I think it's maybe, I don't know. That's my understanding of it.
I've just never seen a probationary period where you don't pay people what your starting rate is.
Mm-hmm.
That just doesn't sit well.
One of the things
every job, it's just another way of every job you get paid more with more seniority. Don't you?
Yeah, but
it's
usually
not
you
based off
don't.
a percentage of your.
You don't start below your starting wage.
One of the things we do here is we don't have, which some districts do, I think more than don't, is like for their support staff they have a base level, and they do have kind of a step up over time, okay, after 5 years of service, your pay goes up, after 10 years it goes up.
Mhm.
We don't have that here.
Right.
That's also been a conversation among staff that I'd like to visit with the compensation committee. I see both sides of it. I see the veterans who say, wait a minute, I've been here a long time, what's my incentive? But I also see the young, brand new, top-notch employee who says, I'm doing the same work, and many of our young, I think of paraprofessionals. It's like, well, hey, I'm right in there doing the hard work
Yeah.
that the veterans been doing. So I see both sides of that argument. This is maybe a small version of that. I don't know that the new person doesn't make as much as I don't know. So we talked about doing away with it. We talked about keeping it. We were kind of arrived at a compromise here. So I'm open to
So when do benefits and stuff kick in for new hires? Is that
immediately. That's immediately. Yeah.
So immediately, but if they've left, they don't get accrued vacation, which is interesting because accrued means it's yours.
They don't get any. They don't get a payout at the end if they quit, which that's kind of covered in other language in here too.
Okay.
So
That's a very uncommon practice, to not pay out an accrued benefit.
well, the world of education has a lot of uncommon labor
Mhm.
practices. So.
Which might also be part of the reason why we struggle with some positions.
Some of it is beneficial too. We get some things as educators and education employees. It's a unique. It's got history going back to pre-Act 12, Act 10, and
Yeah, a lot of it's tradition just getting pushed forward.
yeah. So I'd like to modify that, and that's the recommendation. But obviously, it's the board's decision. If you want to discuss it more.
I think we should move it from 12 to 24.
I feel like this is gonna go south real fast.
Real fast.
All right, well, I will enter, well.
Oh, sorry, I got one more
Yeah,
change.
go
Sorry.
ahead.
Scroll, Christy, what page is it on your phone?
No, I'm not.
27.
27, page 27, way down. Just tightening up some language. So one of the parts about, and we've been talking about our strategic plan here without knowing it. I'm going back to some of the topics here tonight. We've been hitting on it. Page 27, procedure, employee. This is support staff. Performance reviewed on a biannual basis, so every other year. I want to add some language in here, or more often as determined by the employee supervisor. Employees are subject at all times to expectations contained in the performance evaluation document. So it just if somebody wanted to make some weird interpretation of, an employee where you're saying, hey, we need to talk about your performance, it's not meeting the standard that we hope for and expect, I'm not reviewed this year. Well, that should be, we're able to, do a full review on an employee at any point if it's warranted. So that's all that is. So.
Didn't we just talk about doing reviews more often and those kind of things? Why a biannual? Why don't we do it yearly?
Well, the biannual is the language that's been in here. I'd say that a big area of growth and improvement for us would be to do our support staff evaluations have been very sporadic at best.
So biannual
And so-
can mean two things. Because when I read it, I thought it was twice per year.
Twice a year.
Right.
You said
Should be
every other year.
semi-annual?
So yeah, because it means both.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna actually
Yeah.
read it, you're like, am I
So are we
evaluated twice
talking
per year?
twice a year?
No.
No.
Our interpretation is every other year. So our teachers are evaluated the first 3 years every year, and then after that it's every third year. That's what the DPI does for educator effectiveness. That's what the recommendation is. As far as a formal evaluation, it's a matter of capacity. If we evaluated every support staff every year, these guys would have a very difficult time, I think, pulling that off. So.
Well, and that, we're talking minimums. If these guys are doing a good job of what they're doing, they're kind of constantly doing that as you go throughout the day with everybody, keeping everybody in between the lines and stuff, right? So.
Right. The majority of, the evaluation process is informal, but we need, that's part of our strategic planning this year, and part of our strategies is to revamp our support staff evaluation process. So.
Should it be that they're subject at all times to the expectations in the performance evaluation document? Or subject at all time to the expectations of their position. Because you should be evaluating the expectations, their performance against the expectation of the position.
Which I would say is contained in the document, you know.
Okay.
There should be, you know, we want to redo them all, one for food service, and, you know, we've done the one for paraprofessionals already. We want to have,
Okay.
you know, so that it pertains to their specific
Yes,
position.
okay.
Good question.
And then can we make a note
Mhm.
at some point to come back to whatever the recommendation is with that probationary period, if that does go to the comp committee?
Mhm.
Okay.
Any other changes, Chris?
Those are the two that I had to recommend, so.
All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the support staff employment handbook.
Second?
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the 24-25 support staff employment handbook. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. The next item of business is the approval of the 24-25 district transportation handbook.
There are no changes in here other than dates and names to update our employees, so I have no changes to discuss.
I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve 24-25 district transportation handbook.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the district transportation handbook. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next item of business is the approval of the 24-25 elementary and junior high school student family handbooks.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to the principals for this. So this is, yeah, the,
Elementary tends to be a little bit easier. High school tends to have some different things that may pop up. So opening in the elementary one, there's really not a lot of changes. Obviously some staffing. You'll see on page 8 that highlighted there, it was a bit.ly, and I just like to see the name. That's all that means. It says it takes us to our board docs on page 8. One of the things Mr. Peterson and I talked about, or just tightening up, is start time of school. We had it a couple different times on the bell schedule. We just wanted to reflect 8:20 is the start time of school. And I think those are the costs of lunch. Let's see, highlighted. Other than that, it's a pretty consistent document from year to year for the elementary kids.
see, Teresa, we didn't talk about this, but one thing, I think it may have been listed as a bit.ly there, just because if people are reading a paper version, they can type in the address if they need to. That was, I think, the reason why it was that
Okay.
way, so.
You want to approve or just do both?
Let's just do both, then we'll do them all in one shot.
Scroll through mine, nothing major here. As you scroll down, just some updated names, put the mission statement of the strategic plan in there. Graduation requirements, I'm on page 4 now. A couple of minor changes, the board approved personal finance. Well, the state legislature passed that, and then we approved it here, starting with the class of 2026, so that is reflected in there. I crossed off the math requirements just because there's some different avenues there now that didn't exist before, so that's not relevant anymore, so I crossed that off. Scrolling down, the Wisconsin Guarantee and the Direct Admit Wisconsin. These are two somewhat similar programs. The Wisconsin Guarantee was state legislature passed, and then the Direct Admit was a dual effort by the DPI and the UW system. Basically, both programs are designed to keep Wisconsin kids in Wisconsin schools. And so I wanted to add some language there so students and parents are aware of what both of those things are. And as our juniors become seniors, we'll make sure Mrs. Kaler and I send out information on both of these programs as well. Scrolling, we are going to make some changes to the parent-teacher conference schedule here. I think we've mentioned this during the strategic planning night, in that we're going to focus more on academic and career planning and preparing and having those conversations with student and parent. And so instead of 4 times, that'll be 3 times throughout the year. So I adjusted that. The 4th one won't be a parent-teacher conference night, but it'll be staff traveling to local businesses and learning about what they're looking for out of our graduates and to kind of help us in our academic career planning. So some changes there, so I updated the language. If anyone has questions, please don't hesitate to stop me either. Scrolling down, I'm on the top of page 8 now. This should have been tweaked last year, somehow I missed this. We don't have any red and green statuses during RAP anymore. And so that just says that a student who is struggling will be pass requested by the teacher for help during RAP. Scrolling. I'm on page 13 now. I went through a process this spring with student council members in the junior high and the senior high separately, and had them look through the student handbook, and they had an opportunity to recommend changes. So our junior high had some major changes. They felt that hugging was okay, and inappropriate hugging would be covered under inappropriate touching. So they wanted me to cross off hugging and embracing, knowing that we're already covering that under inappropriate touching. I thought that was a fair request, so I put that in there. Under physical attack, there's a reference to a board policy that no longer exists, so I crossed that off. Scrolling, we're just about there. Junior high students also, junior high students also wanted to be able to keep some food in their locker for after school. And so they wanted to adjust and say unsealed pop can't be kept in the lockers, and perishable foods cannot be kept in, but they wanted the opportunity to have some things in their locker for after school. And we're okay with that, I think.
So that should be struck?
No, those are added, because it used
Oh,
to
they're
say
added, okay,
pop,
I'm sorry.
juice, snacks, etc. Now it's unsealed pop, juice, snacks, perishable foods.
And then the junior high kids also pointed out to me that we did not have our Warrior Wednesday in the student handbook, so our character ed, so they helped me craft some language to put in there. So that's on page 27 now. Kind of outlines what we're trying to do and the goals of our Warrior Wednesday program. And our high school students were good with everything, which I took as a compliment, because most time teenagers think they're being treated unfairly, and they apparently did not think they were being treated unfairly by the student
Did you give
handbook.
them ample time to read it in
I
front
gave
of you?
them, I think I gave them too much time. And so they came back with, yeah, we're good.
All right, I will entertain a motion. Thank you, you guys.
I move to approve both the elementary and the junior, senior high student family handbooks.
All second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next item of business, I believe, is the 24-25 elementary and junior high
Oh, I did that.
No, we got
Yep.
school building
Oh,
handbooks.
school.
the building handbooks.
So these handbooks here are for staff.
Okay.
Not connected with their contract, but just the expectations for the staff.
Operations of the building, I guess you could say, yeah.
Both, I think all of our handbooks now include the strategic plan, the pillars, so that's heading it off on all of those. I would say the changes start maybe at 10, and that's kind of the only page they happen on, in regards to lesson plans. So there are a number of districts that don't require anything. Some of the wording I did borrow from Mr. Melberg's handbook, just as some staff are in both buildings, it's nice to have consistent language when they have lessons, high school and elementary. The thought of the college type lessons where you have your objectives and you write out all of your plans, and that's really not sustainable for educators these days. But what we did implement last year, and this is more reflective of that process, is we have more of a Google Doc or a sheet, and every classroom teacher puts their learning targets and standards on that, and it's visible to the whole staff. So a kindergarten teacher could check in, honestly, this is where we're hoping it goes, with 5th grade and see, oh, you're working on ecosystems, hey, we're starting to work on oceans or whatever, maybe we can join together and do something. So that's something that we're trying to hope to do. So what we have the staff doing, and it's written in yellow there, is making sure they're posting those essential standards, your learning targets. They're called a number of things, so I kept some of the wording in there of objectives and goals. It all encompasses that, but that it is updated with also keeping a complete plan book that any one parent, myself, could ask, well, what is your week-long plan? I'd like to see that. And that would have more details about their lessons. We also are now in here, and it's something I think Chris had us doing, but it wasn't necessarily in here, is posting those learning targets. Having it visible to the students so they know what their goals are for the day, and just having those types of anchor charts, they're called, or ink posters, like here's what we're learning today, and they can reference back to that. So that's number 5 on page 10, just making sure that they are posted throughout there. So any questions on lesson plans? We're not saying we're getting rid of anything, they're just formatted in a different way, and it's really kind of interesting what Mrs. Gillick has done each week is she prints off that large spreadsheet and we actually post it in the lounge, and then we can, it's a good place to kind of check in and see what everyone's working on. So I'm hoping it'll become more of a conversational piece too, so it doesn't make it so siloed. We're really trying to be more of a community of learners. And then just something about getting our attendance in on time. We didn't have a set time with that, and we just want to be really conscientious of making some parent phone calls if a child is not at school, and they're trickling in around 9 or 9:30, and honestly, if you have a 5-year-old who's not at school yet, miss the bus, parent doesn't know, 9:30 is way too late to know if the child isn't there. So we just need to be very consistent that we gotta have that by 8:45, so those calls, if a child has not shown up and a parent forgot to call, we are on the phone immediately, so to track them down. Hasn't been an issue, but we are not wanting it to become one. And no other changes throughout the book.
Two things on the high school. One, if you scroll to page 12, they're right together. So we're going to implement this year what we're calling a safety net form, and that is any student who is at risk of failing a course with a failing grade, a teacher will have to fill out a safety net form throughout the quarter. And basically what this is designed to do is have teachers document everything we're doing to help that student be more successful. Are we calling them down during RAP to work with them to do some reteaching? Do we have constant communication home to make sure that parents are in the loop and trying to help us on that end too? Just to make sure that we're doing everything on our end to help that kid learn and help that kid pass the class. So we're going to require those forms with any failing grade, and so that we've got everything documented that we're doing to help the kid. And then below that, kind of the same thing earlier is we don't have our RAP red status, green status anymore, so I struck that language, and I think the safety net forms largely will kind of take over that language anyway.
Will coaches be notified if an individual's in sports and possibly help that way as well? So they're notified ahead of, I know Matt had a question about like wrestling and coming that end of the quarter. And
Our coaches do a great job, and we remind them as well. Our coaches do a great job of usually reaching out to teachers and saying, hey, let me know. I don't have it on there that they should reach out to the coach, but our coaches have done a really nice job of being in contact with teachers, and a lot of them send an email at the beginning of the season that says, hey, here's my roster, if there's any issues, please keep me in the loop on it. So, and that has been very helpful.
Sometimes that might help some kids like, oh yeah, I better step up.
Yep, and we've had a number of coaches who have had kids working on things during practice to make sure that the academics are coming first. So.
I know, Brian, that you guys are looking for more things to do. But I'm just gonna throw this out there, maybe we should make, if somebody's failing a grade, and I don't know how many there would be at any given time, but if somebody is failing a grade, maybe that should be shotgunned out to the staff, because some of the staff members might have a connection to that kid that they could probably, if they see him in the hallway, they could maybe, you know what I mean, put their arms around him in some way, shape, or form, as well as the coaches would want to know that too, because, you know, that's part of, you know, a good coach, that's part of their thing, is getting their kids to stand up and do their stuff so they can. So I'm just throwing it out there that maybe it would be a good practice. I don't know what that would look like, how that would be formed, but just a suggestion.
And we're going to do something, and it's not on here, but a little bit with our PLC process this year, where when we're talking about academic behaviors, every teacher is going to, every 2 weeks is going to pick a couple of students that they say, we need to go the extra mile for this kid, and spend 2 weeks, you know, doing some little things to make sure that we're helping all these kids, and I think a lot of that will be covered when we're picking those kids as well.
I think Brian's done a nice job of, with RAP, kind of redefining it to what I think the original vision was, you know, closer, you know, to that vision of having it be that tool. RAP is a tool for that monitoring. It's your homeroom. You know, it's that teacher who's looking over, here's my 18 kids, and I'm looking over my 18 kiddos here, and it's their homeroom to say, all right, that teacher is the one, you know, checking their grades. Hey, I see you're struggling in, you know, tech ed. You need to go this project for Mr. Larson. You need to go down and check that out. Or I say, hey, you're in science class. You need to go. What's going on? You know, do you have that with you? Get it out. Let's get going. You know, and that's. I think Brian's done a really nice job of promoting that mentality of like, hey, RAP is that productive time. That is that catch-up time. It's that connection time with that adult, and exactly kind of what you're talking about there. That transparency of grades, looking at, you know, so teachers can see all their kids' grades and each other's kids' grades, so they can help out. Yep.
So you don't have to follow FERPA then? Privacy.
FERPA applies to, I mean, if the teach, we do. And
Okay.
it's on a need-to-know basis. So, but if I have that student anytime
Yep.
throughout the day, which includes my RAP, I have
Yep.
the ability to see all their grades.
Yes.
But if let's say I teach only juniors and seniors, I don't need to see the 7th graders' grades.
Yeah.
I shouldn't really.
I just want, when we were talking about shooting it out to coaches, is that a need to know?
Coaches can see student grades because
Okay.
as employees and
Okay.
that work with those students, so they are allowed to.
I just
Yep.
wanted to
That's a good question.
just
yeah.
clarify.
Yeah.
And what is a need to know? If that's what we want to do, is fully support our kids, I would say that would be a justification for a need.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Grades first, sports second. That's kind of-
Yeah, it just like you're saying, you wouldn't shoot out a.
Yeah,
all-
it's just
you
making
wouldn't-
sure that we're cognizant about
Yeah.
like
You wouldn't.
who it's gonna go out
You wouldn't
to.
send out all the kids' grades who have an F to all the coaches. You'd send
Yeah.
out the students who are, let's say, in basketball to the basketball
Yes.
coach, and the students who are in wrestling to the wrestling
Yes.
coach, and so on. Yep.
Just a
Yeah,
clarification.
that's what we
And I
do.
should say that goes both ways too, because our teachers do a very nice job too. They know the sports that our kids are in during the
Right.
season, so, and they know that those coaches want them at practice and participating, so they do a pretty good job of giving coaches a heads up too, that
Mhm.
if a student is struggling.
And sooner than later.
Yep.
In certain instances, like, oh,
Mhm.
crud, we're a week away, and
Yeah, that's why I like the safety net form, because we also have our kids that we know are gonna struggle, and if we start that, you start that early, I think
Gives them
sometimes we
time
cut
to-
some things off before they dig themselves too big of a hole.
right.
Right on, cool. All right, I'll entertain a motion then, unless there's some more changes.
That's it.
I'll make a motion to approve 24-25 elementary and junior senior high school building handbooks.
Second?
It's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. The next item of business is just a quick reminder that the annual meeting is on Monday, August 26th at 7 p.m. So make sure you've got that on your calendars.
Everything in there, and it's at odd time at 7 p.m. We're gonna meet in the library. That's the first day of in-service this year, so it's a little different. We'll have
Mm.
in-service haven't gone on that day, and then the annual meeting that.
Nice.
invite community members.
That's right. So now that with the budget approved now, then I'll be pushing all that, all those notices out here in the next day or two.
Yeah, maybe we should make it kind of a challenge for each one of us to bring a community member into the district annual meeting. Just to see if we can get some people to show up and get involved.
Besides our spouses.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was gonna send my spouse.
Yeah.
Find another friend.
All right, then the next item of business, then, the board policy updates and approvals, the second reading. There we go. All right, Chris, you want to take that away?
Yeah, second reading of the following board policy updates: 2264, non-discrimination on the basis of sex and education programs or activities. That's the new policy. So this is the Title IX policy. We did the first reading last time. And then 2266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs or activities. That's the revised policy. So, I've been sending out to you guys the legal updates on this. This has been a controversial thing across the nation. Just to clarify, so 2266 is our current policy, our old policy, so to speak. And there's a revision to that only to say, because this is how crazy this is. So if you have a Title IX complaint or investigation of an event that happened, an alleged event that happened prior to August 1st, you have to use the old policy. If it's August 1st or after, then you would use the new policy. So you can't just get rid of the old policy because that's how detailed this is. So
So how long do we have to hold on to the old policy?
That's a good question.
Like, what's the statute of limitations?
Yeah,
for?
that's a great question. Yeah, I don't think anyone's given us any. Yeah. So I tried to over the weekend, kind of worked on, and today I added in a document that I think can help maybe guide the discussion here a little bit. So if you click on that first document, it's just kind of like notes and considerations. So talked about what I just said there about our old policy and our new one. So there's been lots of conversation. I kind of about 3 weeks ago, if I was a betting man, I would have predicted that there was some talk that the Department of Ed would just like push it off because they took 22 months to sit and write these rules and review and go through this whole process, and then they publish it and they say, yep, in 2 months you got to have it implemented, adopted, everyone trained by August 1st, which was ridiculous. Thank you very much. There's been lawsuits filed in different circuits around the country. So there was injunctions put in place in those states. They didn't cover Wisconsin and our circuit. Then it was expanded, the last one, to include schools that had members of certain political groups. I can't remember the name of the first one. The second one was Moms for Liberty. And then the way that played out was basically the judge said, well, any schools where you have members of Moms for Liberty is part of this injunction now. And so then they told Moms for Liberty, give us a list of all your schools. And they said, well, we can't really do that. We have schools all across. So then there was this back and forth in these lists. And the first list that came out was a fairly small list in Wisconsin, and we weren't on it. And then a second list came out, and we still weren't on it. And then a third list came out, and then lo and behold, we were on it. So I have no idea how we got on the list. But apparently, basically, people could say, well, I'm in that group, or I'm going to be in that group. So therefore, now you're apparently part of a lawsuit. The point of the injunction is that it doesn't mean a school district is compelled to do anything or not do anything. What the injunction meant is that the Department of Ed can't take any sanctions against a district that doesn't adopt the new policy. That's all it means. And I was kind of expecting, with all the chaos and confusion, that the Department of Ed, there was talk that they might just delay it and say, hey, January of 25 is when you need to implement this new policy. And that didn't happen. They said, nope, we're full steam ahead, we're doing this. So here we are. So there's been even developments in the last few days, like late last week, I learned, so the UW system is not adopting it. Or not adopting a new policy. I learned today from Mr. Melberg that Marquette University is not. It's kind of a mix as far as districts. So there were school districts that had, their elementary school was on the list for Moms for Liberty, but then their middle school wasn't, and then their high school was. So we were at a legal conference. So what are we supposed to do in that situation? So anyway, I tried to lay out here, you can adopt a new policy, you can table the new policy, or I don't know, any other options, what they might be. Benefits and risks of each. If you adopt it, the procedures would match the law. One of the things that we learned, I think, at that legal conference is that some of the procedures are actually a little more streamlined, so that's kind of a good thing about the new policy. The controversy comes from, of course, the expansion of the discrimination. What's the definition of discrimination on the basis of sex, and expansion of the definition of sex discrimination, and
To include what, Chris?
to include, and I'll get the wording wrong, but basically to include someone's transgender status or gender identity as a form of sex discrimination. So that's what's raised the controversy around the policy. What our attorneys not our attorneys, but attorneys in Wisconsin, and I've shared with you, is they said, in Wisconsin it's not that big of an issue, simply because we already have court cases that would say this is the law of the land, that you can't discriminate on someone's gender identity. But this is just another place that it codifies it. It is silent on sports participation. I think there's some misinformation out there about it allowing sports participation by transgender students. It does not do that specifically. Downsides, there's lots of pending litigation and controversy. There's lots of potential confusion about the policy, I think, just that misinformation or partial information. I think there's potential for it to be undone by future court decisions. So we could adopt a policy and then whiplash in 4 months and there's a new court decision and now we undo it. So those are, some thoughts on adopting it. If you table the policy, we wouldn't be alone. There's other entities that are not adopting it. What it would mean is we'd simply continue following our current Title IX policy. So the law would be the law, but we would still follow the current one. There wouldn't really be any legal risk. That's what we were at that CISA 11. The attorney who presented on this topic was actually our attorney, Trevor Helmers. So that was kind of neat. He's an expert in that area. The question was asked, if you don't adopt the policy, are you at any legal risk? And he said, not really, because it simply means, but especially if you're on the list, if you're part of the injunction, the Department of Ed is supposedly barred from taking any sanctions against us for not doing it, and you're still going to follow your old policy. So it doesn't mean that by not adopting it, you're going to allow sex discrimination or sexual harassment and things like that. So. We would continue using the current or old policy. So, I can see there's just a mess,
Well, and even if it wasn't sex discrimination, there could be something that reaches the level of just plain discrimination. Like, I'm not quite understanding why they're delving so hard into just this one area when discrimination is very overarching of so many things, which is why I think they're saying there's not much liability.
Yeah, and Title IX is specifically specifically for sex discrimination. So it's, I think I told you guys last time there was the policy. You saw how long it was last time as we went through it, and there's a 1,500-page summary of the new Title IX rules.
Yeah.
As far as funding, from what I read, they can't withhold.
It wouldn't. Yeah.
There's no.
No, there would be no. They would not be able to withhold funding, and the reality of that too would be one of the attorneys that were talking about they can't really find a case where the federal government's actually ever really done that. So
I just think table it. I think they got to figure this out.
Well, that's the three options. The three options are table it, adopt it, or there's 4 options. We can table it, we can adopt it, we can change it, or we could not adopt it. Yeah, that's 4. Chris and I talked a little bit about this prior to the meeting. Other ones are tabling it. I don't know if anybody has adopted it. I suppose some have adopted it out there, I'm sure.
yeah.
And I'm not really advocating for this because Chris thought this wasn't a good idea, but to actually just make a change to it, to take that part out so we could use the procedural portion of that.
I know, I was like, oh, I like the procedural part of it because it's really nice, but
But then we'd kind of be sticking our heads up out of the group of us districts
Yeah.
saying, hey, we're not going to adopt your stuff, and we might become a target. But then Chris mentioned that might be political, or what did you call it? Occupational suicide or something? And I thought, well, that'd be a pretty good deal. We'd have him locked in, we could cut his pay, and be stuck here, so.
We could, if you want to kind of Frankenstein a policy together and kind of write our own, we can certainly do that. It's your policy, but then, you lose kind of the Neola protection, and
Yeah.
and again, like I was talking about with the principals too, it's kind of like, well, if you adopt it, you're not alone. If you don't adopt it, if you table it, I should say, you're not alone. There's districts doing, if we do our own Frankenstein policy, we're kind of alone, and that scares me a little bit. So.
Yeah. Oh, so you
even
don't
if
like
we
being
tabled
alone.
it for a while, we can find out-
Not in a legal standpoint, no.
We can bring it in then, right, at any time, there's no,
If we table it, we can just wait till
Yeah.
how this plays out.
Yeah.
but give it a month, we might say, yep, okay.
Yeah.
Well, give it a month, it'll change.
Well, yeah, it might be
Sure.
gone, and then we'll be like, hey.
I mean, it's changed in 3 weeks,
Yeah,
I
I know.
think, so. I think.
Yeah, but I think as we have that on the table, it's on the stove and on the back burner, we gotta think about, I think as board members, we have to think about what our responsibilities are. So what do we got for responsibilities pushing our way? We've got the federal government telling us that we have to pass this by law. We have the Pledge of Allegiance that has the line in there that says, the God part, under God, but there should be another sentence after that, or a phrase that says your own interpretation. So anyway, we've got the state telling us that. We've got our superintendent who's doing his job, who's telling us that we gotta, so he's doing his job. We as board members have to do our job and decide whether or not eventually would want to allow the interpretation to come into our district. But if we table it, then we don't have to, that's fine with me. I'm down with that too. I just want to get everything on the table that is going into this big pot of stew, so to speak, just so we all kind of have some framework on how to make the best decision. Because if it's our duty to stick our heads up, I'll stick my head up, because this is something that I would draw a line in. This is the hill that I'll die on, is accepting that type of a reality, in my opinion. But if you guys want to table it, we can do that.
I think we have to table it until they sort it all out, because you can't make a decision one way or the other when they're still, they're changing the rules every day. So,
Yeah, I just
I just think it needs to calm
yeah.
down.
Standing on that same hill with you, so.
It's like
Well, that's right.
I mean, it's.
Like the feds aren't changing the rules anymore, but it's the court cases are changing the rules every other
Yes.
day. Yeah, exactly. Every day a new legal update comes out, and I just think it's so unstable right now that I think
Very hard.
my default is to, with all things, we got, are we, what's best for kids? Are we putting kids at harm by one way or the other? We gotta look at that, and are we doing the right thing for the district by, keeping us out of legal liability and protection that way? And if that all kind of, we're kind of safe either way, and I think all that considered, I kind of default to the when in doubt, do nothing. Let's take the conservative approach. If there's nothing required to change, that we're not going to do any harm by not changing. I think that may be a safe, again, see how the legal challenges play out. And the story is definitely not finished, I don't think, here.
Okay, so
Do we have to make a motion to table it?
well, that being said,
Just take no action.
yeah, we have to take a motion to table it, but I will entertain a motion, if anybody wants to make any changes to it first. And then I will entertain a motion, to table it indefinitely. Is that the right word, or does that mean forever?
That means forever.
No, it just means, or until it's brought up again.
Right,
Till the
okay.
courts play it
So
out.
I'll entertain either of those motions, or any other motions you guys want to make for that matter, but.
I make a motion to table it indefinitely.
That's right.
Title IX policy consideration.
Okay. It's been properly moved and seconded to table. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay. I should have asked Bo to fix this while he was in here. Next item of business is our Didn't we have other policies on that? Was it just
No,
the one?
that was the only one, yeah. We're all done with them last month, so.
Okay. Next item of business then is our district notes from our superintendent, Mr.
Okay.
Chris Peterson.
Something more enlightening or more light than what we've put to, so.
Is there some happy stuff
Nice,
in that?
yeah, lots of happy stuff. It's a busy time of year. People think of summer in July, but it's a busy time. Just want to, like always, thank our maintenance crew. We've been working hard all summer, getting the building shined up and turned over. IT, Bo is here tonight, buses, bus driver meetings tomorrow. Well, just some updates. I just kind of go through the calendar and look back on all the things that have happened since our last meeting. Quite a few, So we got the sound panels installed in the high school music rooms. Remember you guys approved those like way a long time ago? And we looked at doing it ourselves as a cheaper option, and then that turned out to be not a good idea. So anyway, they got installed, so they look awesome. I'm sure they're going to sound awesome. We had swimming lessons in mid-July. Great job, Wendy, running, coordinating that. We had lots of students in the buildings all summer. ETS going on, camps, open gyms. Football and cheer practice have started already. Volleyball and cross country start next week. We had our audits last week, or August 29th through July 29th through August 1st. Eve's first audit, flying mostly solo on that. I had some help along the way getting ready for it, but did a great job with that. So. Congrats to Eve getting kind of that first one under the belt as a bookkeeper. A lot of hiring activity going on, as you saw. We're doing in the stages of final planning for August in-service, getting close on that. We had the whole admin team went up to the legal summit at CISA that we referred to earlier. That was a good day, big thing. Lots of work on the budget. That's been the big focus, I think, here in July. So. We're going to have an admin team day-long retreat here later this week to kind of just look at a lot of strategic planning stuff and look at implementation and our plans for that and the rollout with staff more so and really find details and planning and calendaring. I mentioned bus drivers are all coming in tomorrow. We're going to start practicing routes and communicating with families. We're going to train all of our office staffs on the use of Narcan. Which is it's becoming, it's a grant, it's free, it's from the Polk County Sheriff's Department, and most schools are having this now where it's a medicine that can be used for if someone has a opioid overdose, and the finding it's often like with visitors or parents or adults, or it could be students, but something you hope you never have to use, kind of like an EpiPen. Got DPI reports cooking here in the summertime that I'm working on. We got next week, we got new teachers training, we got CPI training, we got special ed training, staff trainings. Teresa organized another substitute teacher and substitute support staff appreciation day on Friday this week to try to also recruit new subs. Camp Junior High.
Sorry, 8:30 if you want to come for a donut and meet our wonderful substitutes.
Yeah, 8:30 on Friday.
We'll see you on Friday.
It's-
Yeah, we're doing okay.
All things considered, we've got a pretty good list. Camp Junior High comes up on Monday the 26th. That'll be going on actually the first day of in-service, and our annual meeting, of course, we talked about. In-service is a little different this year. It's 4 days instead of 3. That's just kind of a one-year oddity. And then we'll have kids in here the day after Labor Day. High school will be full classes the first day. Elementary with their open house now. It's become a tradition, I will say. A very well-liked tradition, I think, and a great way to start the year. So just, lots of stuff going on, and all the more fun to talk about than Title IX policy.
Yeah.
That is a fact.
Well, if I was going to have that conversation with anybody other than you guys, we got a good board. That's all I got to say. So, thank you, Chris, for that. Future agenda items. Anybody have anything that they want to put on the next agenda?
Quick question: is school and sports kickoff here, and like our communication tools? I know that was one of the pillar things as far as what apps and this and that. Is there some talks on streamlining or picking said?
So you don't have 5 you're checking?
Like, not that volleyball's bad, but I'm going to point out they use a Team Reach now. I know there's some parents that didn't get on it that have come to me, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not on it.
Right, and then pushing some notifications out and not probably, like Snapchat probably shouldn't be for last minute practice.
Oh, yeah.
I know there's some girls that don't have Snapchat because parents and stuff, so I think we need to do our
That's a
due
good point,
diligence
Lori.
to, make sure parents are in the know as
Yep.
well as the kids and whatever.
Is there one
This,
that would accommodate coaches, teachers, right down the line that we can just say, this is what we're using?
I wish I could say
It
right
would
now.
even be nice if there was
certainty
one
that
for
there was.
sports and one
well,
for
even,
school, like.
young kids, old kids, when parents got
Yeah.
multiples, I know we talked about it probably a
I know
month or so
band,
ago.
choir, and
but-
cheer uses Remind, and we had to give
If-
permission for the school to
Well,
use
right,
that.
Remind was one of them.
And that then sends to parents and it sends to students.
Yes.
So I enjoy, it's worked great for the things that my
Mhm.
Just
students are involved in.
Yeah.
standardization, I
Yep.
guess, so
Like,
parents are.
Developing a communication plan this year so that, I think, yeah, that's definitely, I think we tightened it up during the pandemic and now it's drifted apart again, and I think people find new tools and oh, this cool new tool, and it's,
Yeah.
oh, great, but, we're not all on the same page, and, staffing changes.
I don't want 3 or 4 apps.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think most parents do.
Oh my gosh, I actually, to be honest, I don't even check them. I can't keep up with them.
Right, yeah, and there's new ones.
I only have
every
4
day.
kids in the district.
Oh my.
And they're not
Just-
even at the busiest time.
Bringing it up,
Greg.
I think
Yeah,
it'd be
that's
now
okay.
would be a good time.
Yep, good reminder to be part of that.
All right, I will, go ahead.
I would like to see maybe next time, if we haven't filled the 2 big positions there,
Yeah, where are we at with those?
I'd like to know what we're doing out of the box to get those covered
Everything possible.
and and hired, so.
Yeah.
I've
Everything
not
possible.
seen one of them on Facebook. I can't remember which one, because I was gonna pull them both and put it out there. I do have lots of teacher friends, but one of them isn't on Facebook. So
Hmm.
I would get that out there so people can share it.
Okay. I know. I thought they both were.
I thought I think maybe choir and music
Choir
is on
is.
there, but I don't think the special ed teacher is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. No, we're doing everything possible. I think trying to, like you said, think outside the box in every possible way. So, talking with other districts, ways to split positions, share positions. Definitely everything's on the table.
Does that include the karaoke machine idea?
No idea is a bad idea.
My daughter said I could not come in and teach.
I probably had some worse ideas than that I've heard.
I said I could come in Thursday, Fridays for music. She said, no way.
No, it's gotta, yeah, that's what's keeping us up at nights.
Okay, well then, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
It's been properly moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. We are adjourned.